During my senior year of high school, I used to deliver for a local fast food restaurant to make some extra gas money. One rainy evening, it was almost closing time when this one last order came through. I just kept telling myself that I just needed to make this order, then I could go home and get into some warm, dry clothes. I arrived at the address and all the houses around it looked normal except for this one. The windows were boarded up and there was a huge dumpster in the driveway that was full of metal scraps and old furniture. I double-checked the address to make sure, but nope, there was no mistake. This was definitely the place. I decided I just needed to drop the food off and then I could go home. I pulled my hood up, grabbed the bag of food, and hurried toward the door. As the dumpster took up most of the driveway, I had to wiggle sideways in between it and the fence to get past. I hurried to the porch and knocked on the rickety door. There was no answer, and as this whole situation was giving me the creeps, I decided to just leave the food and go. Then I saw a piece of paper being pushed underneath the door. I cautiously leaned over and picked it up. On it, scribbled in blue ink, was the word, "Run." At this point, I didn't care who was inside. I just wanted to get back to my car as quickly as possible. I left the bag of food there and started squeezing past the dumpster. The rain made it harder to see, so I pressed my hands against the side of the dumpster to guide me forward. I was panicking, but the sound of raindrops chiming off the dumpster took over everything, even my own fear. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something moving in the dumpster. I tried to hurry up, but then a gloved hand lunged forward and grabbed a handful of my jacket. I shrieked out and tried hitting the hand off me. I was in a tight space with no room for me to move, and they wouldn't let me go. Another arm appeared and tried to grab me, but I managed to yank myself free and stagger away. I was gasping for breath as I reached my car, not quite believing what had just happened. I looked back and saw a man climbing out of the dumpster. He was looking at me with this creepy, unnerving look. I got in my car and drove away from that horror house. That night I quit my delivery job, but I still often find myself thinking back to that night and trying to make sense of it. Those people clearly didn't live in that house, but they lured me there for a reason. I don't know what they planned to do to me if they'd caught me, and it sure wasn't worth it to go back and find out. I moved to a small town in North Carolina for a few months to take care of my uncle after he'd fallen at work and was on short-term disability. He lived in a small rural town that was completely different than the city life I was used to. It had been a bad day as my uncle had gotten upset about his situation, so I hadn't found the time to go to the grocery store. I didn't want to drive there at this late hour, so I found a drawer full of takeout menus, called a decent-looking one, and ordered some burgers and cheese fries for the both of us. The restaurant said it'd be about 20 minutes, which gave me enough time to begin to unwind with a beer and a movie. I hadn't sat down for long when I heard the doorbell ring. It had only been about 5 minutes since I called the restaurant, so I didn't expect it to be them already. I answered the door, and this girl was standing there with this wild dark hair. She was peering down at the cord on her jacket, which she wrapped around her finger. In her other hand was a plastic bag. She held the bag out to me and in this quiet voice said, "This is for you." I thought it was odd since she got here so quickly, but I just wanted to go and relax. So I pulled some money out of my pocket and gave it to her, but she just stared at it. I told her to take it and to keep the change, but she shook her head and replied, "No, it's on me, enjoy." Then she turned around and walked back up the driveway. This seemed kinda strange, but I was too tired to think too much about it. So I closed the door and took the food into the kitchen. I was unpacking it when I heard creaking sounds coming from above me, which was where my uncle's room was. He couldn't manage the stairs due to his injury, so I went upstairs to check if he needed any help. I knocked on his door, but he didn't reply. I could hear the creaking sounds in his room, so I said, "Hey, Unc, you need any help in there?" Before I could ask again, I heard the doorbell ring. I went downstairs and answered it. A man was standing there holding a paper bag. He must have spotted my confused look, as he told me he had a delivery for me. I explained how there must have been some mistake as I'd already received my order. His eyes glazed over in a look that I can only describe as fear. He asked me if it was a girl who delivered my food, and I said yes. Then he told me that there'd been a mistake with my first order, and he asked me if I'd eaten it. I told him I hadn't, and he looked relieved and told me that I shouldn't eat it, and this was my replacement. This whole thing was creeping me out, so I just paid him and took the food. I watched him leave, locked the door, and then went into the kitchen. I checked the food the girl had given me, but it didn't look or smell right. There was a strange, oily consistency to it. I was throwing it in the trash when I heard more creaking coming from above me. I took out one of the boxes of food and took it upstairs to give to my uncle. I was about to shout to him that the food was here when I heard something coming from within his room, a humming sound. I'd never heard him hum before, so, feeling uneasy, I opened the door and saw that girl leaning over the side of my uncle's bed. One of her hands was twisting the cord of her jacket around her fingers, and in her other hand, she was holding something that was pointed directly at my uncle's face. I yelled and asked her what the hell she was doing, and she immediately dropped the object, ran past me, and went down the stairs. I rushed over to my uncle to check if he was okay and saw the object, a rusty nail. I heard the door slam, so the girl must have unlocked it and left. My uncle was distraught and told me that the girl had threatened to stab him in the eye if he'd so much as flinched. I called the police and told them everything, including how suspicious the other delivery man had been and what he'd said about the girl. The police officer searched the house, but the girl had left. He also spoke to the restaurant, but they denied knowing anything about this girl or there being a replacement order. I thought I'd locked the door behind her, but I must not have. Knowing that girl let herself in and terrified my uncle made me so mad. My uncle didn't deserve to go through that trauma, and he hasn't been the same ever since. If I hadn't gone into his room when I did, then I don't even want to think about what might have happened to him. I worked long shifts, so it was normal for me to order food from an app to save me the hassle of cooking after getting home from work. It was just after 10 p.m. when I got home one night and decided to order a pizza through DoorDash. It gave me a delivery time of 25 minutes, which meant I had time to change out of my work clothes. 40 minutes later, my food still hadn't arrived. Normally, the app lets me see how far away the delivery guy was, but on this occasion, it seemed to be glitching. I hadn't eaten in hours, so I sent a message to the delivery guy, JJ, and asked him how long he'd be. On receiving no reply, and with the location still glitching, I called the restaurant. They told me they'd handed my order to the driver about 30 minutes ago. Convinced that JJ had probably ran off with my food, I hopped in my car and went and picked up some food from a takeout spot close by. I was so hungry I was shoveling fries in my mouth as I got back to the car. That's when my phone beeped. It was JJ saying he hoped I enjoyed my food. His location came up. He was at my house. This really riled me up, but not wanting to get into an argument with the delivery guy, I told him just to leave it on the doorstep, and I threw my phone onto the passenger seat and drove home. As I turned into my driveway, I noticed my porch light was on and saw a man standing there holding a pizza box. I grabbed my food and my phone from the passenger seat and rattled my keys as I walked over to him. As I got closer, I saw that he was wearing a beanie hat, and I smelled something strange, some musky smell. I grunted a thanks to him and took the pizza box. He didn't say anything, but just gave me this creepy smile, then walked up the driveway. I couldn't see his car, but figured he must have parked somewhere nearby. I went inside, and because I was struggling to carry everything, I forgot to lock the door. I went into the kitchen and ate the food I just got from the takeout place and just left the pizza on the table. I heard some rustling outside and saw the porch light flicker on again. I figured it was next door's cat or something, but I went to go check it out. I opened up the door. There was nothing there. I caught a whiff of something, though. That weird musty smell. Then I heard these strange sounds coming from the bush to the side of the porch. It sounded like someone was giggling. I felt uneasy, but I needed to find out who it was, so I walked over there and I said, "Hello, is someone there?" The giggling continued, and then the whole bush shook. I took a deep breath before I peered around the bush, and crouching behind it was the delivery guy. He had his hands over his mouth as if he was trying to muffle his giggles. I asked him what he was doing, but again, he didn't say anything. He leapt to his feet, giggled at me, and then ran off towards my front door, and I watched in horror as he went inside. I didn't have my phone on me as I left it in the house. I didn't want to disturb my neighbors, and at this point, I didn't think he was dangerous. He just seemed a little crazy. So I went inside to get my phone. I couldn't see him anywhere, and as I reached my kitchen, I heard giggling and caught a whiff of that awful smell. I spun around trying to see where he was. I could hear him nearby, but I couldn't see him. As I looked around, I noticed something. There was a knife missing from the block. This crazy guy had a knife. Then suddenly, the cabinet door swung open into my legs and someone lunged forward and struck at me with something. I managed to dart out just in time and saw that guy crouched in my cupboard holding the knife. He looked at me and giggled. I ran out of there and went to my neighbor's house and got them to call the police. It took about 10 minutes for the cops to arrive. I met them outside and gave them my keys to get in. They searched the house, but didn't find that creepy guy anywhere. The kitchen window was open, so he must have left through that. I went back inside pretty shaken up and hoping he was long gone. I don't know, I just suddenly noticed something crawling out of the corner of the pizza box. My heart was thudding as I flipped open the lid. The musty smell overwhelmed me, but worse, crawling across the pizza were dozens of scattering roaches. This JJ deleted his account and the police were never able to track him down. They don't think he targeted me specifically. It just freaks me out knowing that he's still out there somewhere, with the full knowledge of where I live and capable of, I don't even know what.